Architectural Builder Supply is pleased to present you with this recording of the technical question that is listed in the title of this video.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
All right. Hoping you can help me with what I believe is a Rixson Offset Pivot hinge door. And one of the problems is that it doesn't open. It just yesterday stopped opening. And it's kind of a hard stop. Trying to figure out why it is and if it's something wrong with the hinge that I can replace or something else. There's nothing blocking the door. It's not rubbing on anything. But it swings freely about 3 inches and then comes to a hard stop where it's pushing against the actual top of the hinge.
Which Rixson Offset Pivot do you have?
I think it's a 190. I'm just guessing that by the picture, or maybe a
190 is an intermediate pivot.
Oh, okay.
You could have a 190, but really what I'm wanting to know is what's top and bottom.
I see, 190s. So I've been trying to figure out whether this doesn't look like it's a 117. It looks like it could be a 180. Is that a top bottom?
180 is a top only.
Uh-huh.
So now we know 2 of the 3 pieces.
Well, no, there's no intermediate at all. It's just a top and bottom.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll want to know what pivot it is, but the bottom line is at that point, there's not much that goes wrong in those. And in fact, in 30 years, I've never heard anyone say what you just said. Having said that, there's a bearing raceway in there. I could imagine that something has failed in that regard. But the bottom line is it's going to take a technician to get the door out of there and get the hardware and then inspect it and find out what's causing the trouble. There's no other hardware installed other than probably a lock set.
There's just the ball stop, on the other side of the door. So the ball stop and the light switch. That's the only other hardware. So the top and bottom on the hinge side. It's not a center pivot. It's a corner edge. Yeah, corner edge offset. Right. Is this it looks like there's a set screw on the side of the part that's attached to the door and not the jamb. What does that set screw do?
It holds the arm onto the spindle.
It holds the arm onto the spindle. And the screw there's a big flathead screw at the bottom of the hinge. That's in line with the axis.
That holds the decorative cap onto the floor portion.
That holds the decorative cap onto the floor portion, and the one on the top the same.
The top of where?
There's a screw on the top hinge. On the bottom, on the bottom side of the top hinge, there's a bottom.
That's what holds the top door portion and the header portion together.
And should you be able to unscrew that all the way?
Not that you should be able to. The answer is you can. If you are intent on unthreading that, be mindful the door, is no longer stable and
it's heavy to fold out.
Well, right. So you'll definitely curiosity is a good thing, but it did, of course, kill our little cat.
Yeah, until the 300-pound door falls in. It's not 300 pounds, but it is a heavy door. Well, the challenge is because it only opens 3 inches, there's really not a lot you can do without taking this door off. But when I screw that, I did try to screw it to see if it moves. It only moves about 15 minutes or a quarter of a turn, and then it stops. I'm wondering if that's also indicative of something not being aligned in the hinge. The other thing you notice is that when I pivot this door as opposed to the other ones, the other pivot sort of perfectly. Everything's aligned vertically and perpendicularly, and it just pivots. This one seems to cam. It actually, as it only goes 3 inches, but you see it actually. It's not. It's in the bearing, in the axis and in the bearing. You see it move from side to side as you open the door, not just spin.
How old is this pivot?
It's 20 years old.
How many cycles would you guess a week on the door?
Well, for my son's college, he's in college, but for the first sort of 18 years, it probably cycled 10 to 15 times a day.
Yeah, so that's very low volume. It could be that there's a ball bearing in there that developed a flattened spot. It's and that's what's seizing it. And if you pull on it further, you'll certainly damage something worse. But at the end of the day, and I don't know what pivot you have, but what I would do is I would loosen the set screw, the big set screw that's holding the arm to the spindle. I would loosen that. Don't remove it. Just loosen it.
Yeah.
Then I would remove and I would have 2 people doing this. I would remove the screw that's keeping the top pivot together. And now the door is going to be ready to come out when you remove that spindle that's up there, that pin. I would pull that door out. I'd have sawhorses ready. I'd get the door laid down, and I would start inspecting that hardware to see why it's not working fluidly.
Yeah. So when you said the first set screw, you mean the side set screw or the bottom? What do you call them? Both set screws?
Well, there's a screw that is in the arm itself that you can see from the side. That screw head is likely pointing towards the lock side. That once you remove the decorative cap, you'll be able to see that set screw. I would, depending on the pivot you have. I'm guessing you have a heavier pivot because of what you've said so far. So I would loosen that so that once I got the top pivot disconnected from itself, I could tip it out and then lift the door up and off.
Yeah, that's how I thought this would work. Yeah. Any chance I could send you a picture of this and you could identify it?
Oh, it'd be my pleasure to see it. I'll give you my email now if you like.
Okay, after this conversation ended, the client did send me the following 3 photographs, and this is not anything Rixson, and I was able to discover that pretty quickly. So the client can't get his door open, so I pressed him further, and here's what happened. I did tell the client it's not a Rixson pivot, in that it's my opinion the path forward is to get that door open. And that top pivot, I would loosen the set screw in the side here, and then unthread this portion if it didn't just completely fall out, but it would probably need to be threaded out. And then measure everything about that item that is installed in the top of the door in terms of the length and width, and then to send me those dimensions for further review, meaning tell me how long this plate was and how wide it is, and I'd be able to better determine whose pivot it is, different manufacturers. And I followed up with the client 3 days after that, and then 5 days later. So the client replied that this is a picture of the top door frame with the pivot hinge removed. There's another photograph here. And he was able to get it open, and this is what it looks like up in the top. So that's a, obviously what happened here was he was able to remove that top pivot based on my suggestion. So what the client is showing us here is he's saying this is the top pivot. He was able to get it removed by my suggestion. And he says, thank you for the perfect advice of removing that top pivot, because once you remove that screw, loosen that screw, remove this, you'll be able to tip the door out and just lift it open, is what the bottom line was on that. Now, the client goes on to say, notice all of the holes in addition to the 3 for the screws. Here, here, or here, 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 here. He says, I have no idea what he was thinking. I'm imagining the installer. However, over time, the jamb cracked, as you can see, the client says, and the innermost screw stripped and actually fell down, blocking the hinge from opening. So there was so much damage to the frame as a result of the installation. And can you guess what caused all those holes? Well, I can tell you why. It's a 1-inch fly bit or a 1/2-inch fly bit, whatever is used, sometimes called a spade bit or a paddle bit or a butterfly bit. It's just a, I don't know if any of my terminology will work. They may call it a spade bit. Irwin spade, whoop. Yeah, or a paddle bit. And we're talking about this sort of bit. That's what's going to make that preparation that you see there. And the installer clearly did it because, you know, had no better way of doing it. You know, couldn't get up there with a router, which would have been far more preferable, or any other tool. How would I have done it? I wouldn't have used a spade bit. I would have used a Forstner bit. And a Forstner bit is, if I'm spelling it correctly, definitely not. That was close. The advantage of a Forstner bit is that it's the same concept, except that it's flat-ended. It's got a flat bottom to it. So you're not going to get, you know, these extraneous deep penetrations that are inherent to the typical spade bit, which is all of this. So the screw literally fell out, and that dropped down, and it prevented the door from opening. That the client goes on to say he's in the process of epoxying the wood and going to replace the strip screw with a wood insert, and that's this item here, this little wood insert here, and a machine screw. Hopefully this should help me having to replace the whole jamb, and I'm sure it does and did. You know, this doesn't hold really any weight. It's just keeping the door from falling out of the opening. Now, we sell those insert bits, and I'm going to just, I'm feeling lucky. Yeah, I was. SP1082. So we sell that insert bit, and into that SP1082, you're going to run a machine screw. So the SP1082 is a 5/16. We also have the SP1080, which is a 1/4 inch. So the bottom line is, I don't know if a 1/4 20 flathead machine screw would be too large for the client's pivot. He did not supply a picture of what that looks like, but I can tell you that it's going to look not unlike a Rixson 180. Actually, let's look at a oh, actually, it's not a scissors hinge, it's a knife hinge. It's going to look a lot more like this. Okay. Now, I don't believe that this is the exact one the client has, but it's going to be pretty close to it. So there you go. That's what that's going to look like. And, you know, the client completes it. And I went to tell the client that I thought that that would be okay, but I thought a better way to do this would be to that I would have cleaned these holes out, drilled them larger. I would have inserted dowel rods into all of them with glue. I would have gotten a piece of block with a mallet, and I would have pounded the dowel rods in flush with glue. That would have brought the unit back, the wood back to some integrity, not relying on this already compromised, obviously clear cracking that's at least a ½ inch deep. This would not have helped the scenario. Plus, that thread type is far too tight for a wood application where the SP1080 is literally intended for, for what's being worked on. I'm sorry for that ringing. It'll go away in a second, hopefully. Yes, it has. So, I would have dowel rodded all of that, and then I would have just used a chisel to clean it up. So I would have drilled all these holes out larger, cleaner, making sure to not distress the frame anymore. I may have tried to clamp everything together if that would have been possible, and it may have been. Okay. So I would say to conclude that, mystery solved. And like I said, I wouldn't have used that insert bit there. I would not have done that, but I would have I would have done it differently, is the bottom line. So no problem with all that. It seems like it has worked out well. These pictures will probably be out of sequence by the time you're seeing them, but nonetheless, you'll get the point as I blab along. If there's any questions on how to work on these types of pivots, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.
Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.